Hey there, welcome on into VG Emporium, and can you believe it? I've done it! 1 year, exactly, to this day. Indeed, January 14th, 2023, this day today is 1 year from January 14th, 2022, when the first episode of VG Emporium, the grand opening, came out. And thanks to the help of a couple extra episodes, being my birthday episode and then this special episode, makes 55 episodes in 1 year! That's one episode a week plus 2 extras. You know? It's a little wacky, crazy times, a little overwhelming, but hey, I did it. And oh wait, who am I? I'm Rage Cage, the proprietor of this fine establishment. And yeah, I'm a little excited because I did it 1 year. As one of the craziest thing, it's been the most consistent thing I've done as far, like, creatively. Like, you know, more than my music, more than my beatboxing, is this. I've been staying on it every single week. It's crazy. So in celebration of this, I'm going to be doing a highlights episode. Basically, my favorite tracks of the year. I'm going to be picking 12 tracks, so 1 track for each month, and from the various episodes I've been putting out. So I don't know, it's going to be kind of a funky little weird thing. You know, I'll maybe talk about what's going on with that time when I was doing that episode, or why I picked that song, or talk about that song and tell you about it. Thank some peoples. You know, they give some big thanks to very important peoples. It's going to be an interesting, fun time. But before I go any further, let me tell you what this delightful little tune is that brought us in. This is the shop theme from SNK vs. Capcom Card Fighters DS, obviously from the DS, composed by Masashi Sugiyama and Kazuyuki Fujita, and this was played on episode 40, Shop Themes 2. And I turned out to like this song so much that not only did I play it in that episode, and using it to open this episode, but I've also used it in the little greeting/preview I created for my show. And if you're curious what I'm talking about, go to vgemporium.wordpress.com, and it's right there on the homepage. Or if you're a Spotify user, it's right there at the very top of my channel, whatever it is Spotify calls it. So yes, this song, I found it right after deciding to kind of just let go of my golden standard of looking for the perfect Depa Chica Konbini kind of sound, like shop themes, because before I was trying to stick with songs that sounded like that, but then I was figuring out it's too hard to just find those, so if I come across them, I'll find them, if not, and this was just a little magical thing that happened. I found it. It is a perfect Konbini song, kind of up there with Tomato Mart, and it'll definitely probably be showing back up again because it's just so good. So now before we get into our next track, I want to put out a huge thank you shout out to a few folks here. So starting off with the guys of Pixelated Audio, so that would be Brian, James, and Gene. You know, a really huge thank you to those guys because that was my very first VGM podcast. Like, because I hadn't been listening to podcasts before, and then I kind of stumbled upon them when I was looking at VGM Rips, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna check these guys out, and I loved it because it was just like diving into like that weird stuff I was finding on VGM Rips I didn't know existed. So then that set me down the road to finding other video game music podcasts, such as Pixel Tunes Radio, which was hosted by Ed Wilson and Mike Levy, which then eventually split into their own 2 podcasts, so the VG Embassy hosted by Ed, and then XVGM Radio hosted by Mike, along with his new co-host, Justin Schneider, which then introduced me to Rob Nichols and Purnell of Rhythm and Pixels, which is the podcast through the 1-2 punch of Rob Nichols' Mahjong, bonus beats, and then just a motivational, you know, one of the motivationals that Purnell does at the end of the episodes. I can't remember which one, but it just finally just kicked my ass into gear to finally do the podcast I was thinking about doing for a year before this. So a huge, crazy mondo thank you to you all. So now we're going to get into some more music here, and I'm not going to be doing this in a particular order. I was originally thinking of doing like chronological order, like, you know, episode order, but I'm just going to kind of go with how I feel. And what I'm feeling is some original chip tunes. So what I got here for you is Those Glowing Trees, Part 2 by Fuzuke, featured on episode 29, Special Orders 2, and this track had been special ordered in by Aaron Hickman, aka Dia. So that was Those Glowing Trees, Part 2 by Kazuke, and this is an original Famicom chiptune made in FamiTracker using the combination of the VRC6 and the Namco 163, at least 4 channels of that, as well as the base 2A03. And this was featured in episode 29, Special Orders 2, and this had been special ordered in by Aaron Hickman, aka Dia. And so yeah, like, seeing as I kind of fashioned this podcast after kind of being like a storefront, Emporium, the cool thing, I decided to start doing song requests in the form of special orders. And instead of like kind of featuring maybe like a special request here like at the end of an episode or something, I've decided to collect them and feature them in their own episode. So like, people send them into vgemporium@gmail.com or on Twitter, Instagram, or even the Discord if you know where that is. And once I get enough, about 5 or 6, I'll do its own dedicated episode. And so yeah, why I chose this track is because not only because it's a really cool, like really, really good chiptune, but also because it was special ordered by Dia, who is like one of the guys that I really looked up to when I was starting to really get into the Sega Genesis chiptune scene, which I did a whole episode about that, of the Sega Genesis chiptune scene of the 2010s, which I'll be featuring a little later. And Dia was one of the guys I featured on that, and right after that, like about 3 episodes after, he had sent this request in. I was like, all right, yeah, I gotta do this. Heck, like the episode before this was the 4th special order episode, and I've been kind of getting him in, and that's it's pretty cool. Hopefully I'll be getting more in, and I'll be able to do more this year. And the cool thing about it is that I've been getting a few repeat customers coming in, like some names like Alex the Messenger and Professor Tom. But I'm hoping to see some new names kind of come in, like as the where the show gets out, or yeah. So now it's time for some more thank yous, and actually I'm gonna start by thanking Alex the Messenger for just before starting doing my first episode. I actually happened to come upon a Twitter space he was hosting talking about video game music, and we got to talking a little bit, and he kind of gave me some encouraging words, and that was one of the things that helped me okay, I can do this. So thank you, Alex, for that, as well as just being a really awesome guy and being another weekly podcast that just keeping the awesome music coming. And then Professor Tom, as well as Jameson and Martyrs. So Professor Tom does Shujin Academy VGM Club, Jameson of the Bar Silence podcast, and then Martyrs of Re-BGM. All 3 of these guys started the same time as I did. So Martyrs started the same month as I did, so we're kind of like podcast bros because we both got inspired by Rob and Purnell of Rhythm and Pixels to do our own podcasts. And then Professor Tom and Jameson, I think, started the month after following, and yeah, we've all been going strong, kind of doing our own formats and everything. But yeah, it's just been great, and kind of like this sense of kind of not, I don't know how to call it, kind of community bonding, kind of cool. It's just really cool feeling, to know that I'm not the only new one doing all this. There's a group of us that decided to kind of set off on this journey at the same time, and are kind of growing in our own ways, but also have some similarities kind of go on, and so yeah. I don't have the right words for it, but, again, thank you guys for just kind of being there. Not only inspiring me to kind of keep going and do better, but also inspiring each other. I'm definitely not the best at this. But what I'm good at is introducing... stuttering over myself. No, introducing the next track. And it is going to be Pumpledixie, remixed by Nase, and this is a remix of Duckberg from the game Quackshot. And this was featured in episode 4, Remembering Overlooked Remix. And there you heard was Pumpledixie, a remix of Duckberg from Quackshot, remixed by Nase, featured on episode 4, Remembering Overlooked Remix. And of course, obviously this remix is from the site Overlooked Remix, which I'm amazed is still up. Nearly 20 years after it got started, and about 10 years since it's been inactive. Or more to say that since anybody's posted on there. And if you hadn't listened to the episode, and so I'm going to tell you here, this site was hugely influential on my musical taste and just like my general outlook on life. Because I found it when I was like a moody, broody teen in high school, and was really starting to discover my musical tastes. And of course, I was looking for older video game music, and just happened upon it when I was looking for music from Mega Man 4 and found a remix of Skullman Stage. And just from there, it's just been magic. It was magic. Like every single day, once like I'd get a chance to go into the computer lab, I'd go there, see if there was a new remix up, and when there was, if there were 2, 3, even 4 at a time, because there's people just posting all the time, just like the most worst quality stuff, just like some of the worst humor stuff, some of like just like weirdest sounding stuff, like because there was Overclocked remix at the time as well, and that was like some high quality remix going on. But Overlooked remix, that was the place for me because it was just a place that was unabashedly, unashamedly, like totally just free to be ridiculous as it possibly ever could want to be. It was the home for the cream of the crap of remixes. And Martyrs, I know I think I mentioned it to you before, and I'll say it again. You should definitely pull from this place because there's some really good stuff once you really dig into there. I mean, like, it may not be like high quality OC remix stuff, but some of like this, like Nase stuff, is insanely good. Just like it's wacky. It's high. I don't know. You listen to that, but yeah, pull from a guy. But enough reminiscing on the past. It's time to talk about the future. And what I have planned for the future is, some cool stuff. I'm hoping to eventually have myself set up to be able to have guests on soon. And actually, I was been in talks with Robin Purnell of Rhythm and Pixels to possibly have them on my show at some point within this next month or so. Because I was on their show last year in February, and I featured one of Nase's remixes on there, Wacky Ass Tunes. And just kind of like, it'd be fun to have him on here, as well as so many others, like Martyrus, who I mentioned earlier, like being a podcast bro, want to have him on here, and so many others I have. Though I did have guests on the show before, so like go back to Sonic the Hedgehog Zone. I had my nephew on for about maybe 5 minutes to talk about Sonic, and then even I had my buddy Wade on, and actually that leads into our next track, and that is going to be Bedtime Puzzler from Kotoba no Puzzler Mojipittan by Satoru Kosaki, featured on episode 39, an inexplicably cute sound with special guest, my good friend Wade. that was Bedtime Puzzler from Kotoba no Puzzler Mojipittan, composed by Satoru Kosaki, featured on episode 39, an inexplicably cute sound with my good buddy Wade. And boy, oh boy, I tell you, we had a good time. And definitely go check it out. It's a little, the mix is a little off because I only had the one mic, and so now I know I have a second mic ready when I do have another friend on, which I want to do more of as well. And that's another thing I'd like to do more this year as well, is to have more of my friends on. And I have a couple that I've been kind of getting at, like, come up with a topic or get me some tracks that you want to play, and yeah, I'd probably just need to, kind of get on them a little bit more. And I got me a pretty good mix of, VGM nerd buds and not so VGM nerd buds. So yes, definitely look forward to more guests of the physical and digital variety. And another thing I'd like to do more of this year is the interview type episode where, like, for example, episode 52, In the Field at Sacramento Game Expo, where I actually interviewed, like, a good variety of people, like, from, like, just a regular expo goer to all the way to Stephen Frost, who was the production head of Digital Eclipse. And another thing is that, I occasionally the episodes will be hosted by my employees, if you will, curators. Some of them like some different terms is all, but I like to have more of them show up. It all really comes down to scheduling and topics and all that. But the one that actually has shown up a couple times for me, like just right on the fly, is Mamba Chawamba, jovial wrestler and warrior of the Pachuca. And I'll get more into that after I play you this next track, which comes from the episode that Mamba Chawamba hosted for me, is episode 13, Wrestlers and Warriors. And the track is Raiden the Brave from Fatal Fury, composed by Hiroshi Matsumoto, Kazuhiro Nishida, and Toshikazu Tanaka. And that was Raiden the Brave from Fatal Fury, composed by Hiroshi Matsumoto, Kazuhiro Nishida, and Toshikazu Tanaka. And this is from the episode 13, Wrestlers and Warriors, hosted by my good friend and employee, Mamba Chawamba. Probably chide me for not mentioning this, but, jovial wrestler and warrior of the Pachuca. And I think he's had a few other titles, but I'm going to leave that for him to tell you the next time he comes on. But if you're curious as to who or what Mamba Chawamba is, just go check that episode out. He'll tell you everything. And he saved my bacon back on episode 12 when I was being held captive by this weird creature that looked like Garfield but wasn't. It kept calling itself Gadralf. And, luckily Mamba Chawamba came in at the last minute and, pretty much just blew that thing to smithereens. And then somehow a couple of my other employees that happened to live in the basement of VG Emporium brought its ghost back into the world. It's just a spirit now, but thanks to old Lurchford and Pietri, that he's just roaming around. Hopefully he doesn't decide to come back this way, but who knows. So yes, as you probably could gather, I do have employees that happen to kind of work here, like curating songs. Like they have certain things they do. Like some of them are part-time, some of them just come in and whenever they wish. And to list off the ones that we have in order that they've shown up, we have Donatello Valentino, who hosted episode 5, the Valentine's Day special. Scuzzy, who helped co-host the episode 9 FM Face Melters. Mama Chuwamba, of course, episode 13, Wrestlers and Warriors. Julius Valentino, who is Donatello's older cousin, hosted episode 26, Sounds of the Casino. And the last ones to have shown up were Vicent Lurchford and Laurel Pietri from episode 42, Halloween Special. And these are the two that happen to live in the basement underneath VG Emporium. Check that episode out if you want more context on that. I'm still kind of figuring it out myself. And there are still many more that, surprisingly, that kind of just show up and do stuff and work here. I don't know why or how it happens. I'm not sure. I don't actually hire them. I hire some. I don't know. It's a weird place, this VG Emporium. But yeah, like as they'll be hosting episodes as needed, to cover me if I'm not able to do it, or if they have a cool idea and they want to do something, I'll figure out the schedule and I'll get them in here. So now, as you could guess, I play a good variety of things. A lot of video game music of the obscure variety, as well as original chiptunes and remixes. And another thing I like to have on here is video game music adjacent music. So original music that is inspired by video game music. So take demo tunes or digital fusion, which in itself is a pretty grab bag term. But then anyway, a good example of music inspired by video game music is this next track I got here for you. And it's going to be Pachyderm Punch by Floor Baba from their debut album, Game Wave. And this was featured on episode 1, the grand opening. And that ding dang ditty you just heard was Pachyderm Punch by Floor Baba from their 2015 debut album Game Wave, and this was featured on episode 1, the grand opening. And this is a pretty dang good example of original music inspired by video game music because, he started out with the sounds of Yoshi's Island, but then they bump it up, so to say. And this is another thing I want to do more of is feature more of this music in the, future episodes because maybe even do artist highlights. But because, yes, as much as this is a video game music podcast, a lot of what I listen to is stuff inspired by video game music, such as Floor Baba's music. And actually, Floor Baba released an album back in August of this past year, 2022. Last year. It's called Prehistory, and it is so good, amazingly good. I would recommend you go check it out. It was 3 years in the making, and it shows. It shows just the love and everything that they put into it. And I need to feature more of their music on this show. There's just so many musicians like chiptunists, demo sceners, just everything in between. It's just I want to feature on this show because that is the stuff that I really, really love. And, for the demo scene, I've already done a couple feature episodes, so episode 21, .mod are us, and episode 38, my favorites from Nags Presents Best 100 Demo Scene Small Tunes. But my absolute favorite, where my heart is the original chiptune scene. And I've featured plenty of that on here, at least I think, within this last year. And I actually did a couple focus episodes, a two-parter, if you will, focusing on the Sega Genesis chiptune scene of the 2010s, which I was kind of marginally part of. And the next track I got for you is kind of like a combination of these two worlds, the demo scene and the chiptune scenes. So this is Space Standard by Shiru 8-Bit, or just Shiru. And this is created using his software that he created called the TFM Music Maker. And this was featured on episode 25, the Mega Drive Genesis chiptune scene of the 2010s, Model 1. was Space Standard by Shiro or Shiro 8-Bit, and this was featured on episode 25, the Mega Drive Genesis chiptune scene of the 2010s Model 1. And actually, this was a two-part series, so there was Model 1 and then Model 2, so that would be episode 30. And the first one was a focus on like the main, like kind of like the big heavy hitters of the chiptune scene, like of that chiptune scene, and then the second one was kind of like focused on the others that were part of it. And that set of episodes actually holds a big part of me for me because like that was actually one of the first ideas I had when I was thinking of my podcast was like I wanted to do a feature on that scene, like that particular decade, because with this, so Shiro created the software called TFM Music Maker, which eventually led up to VGM Music Maker, which was a tracker that emulated the Sega Genesis sound chips, so the YM2612 and the SN76489. And that just pretty much just opened the floodgate because there was those like Dread, Cosmo BG, Groovemaster 303, Game Genie Sokolov, and Dia. And again, I gotta put like a huge thank you out to them for making this episode possible because I actually got both audio testimonials as well as just like written testimonials from them that I featured on that episode of episode 25. And yeah, I'm just really amazed that I was able to actually just do this and like, you know, kind of do this weird reflection on this point in time because it really was an amazing time. Because prior to this, in order to make Sega Genesis music, you would have to like use you know, kind of like software synthesis or MML and then run it through a driver. I think there was like some other softwares, but it was just like, you know, they were really weird and janky. But again, check that episode out, episode 25, to just kind of get like, figure like what was going on then as well as like the lead up because I got a huge thing from Shiro, which again, I'm amazed and again, thank you for that. Just like the history of like, you know, what brought him up to creating VGM Music Maker. And there's like so many steps there that is just like crazy. The one thing I kind of regret is not doing more focus on the actual chips themselves, but I had done that with a previous episode, Gems Jams, that was episode 3, and that is something I want to do more of, is like, you know, more chip focuses, like, cause like that is something I'm really into because thanks to both, you know, Pixelated Audio as well as another podcast called Retro Game Audio, which has been not running for like the last like 5 years, I think. Was just really feeding this inner part of me that was like starting to learn about this stuff through like VGM rips and making my own chiptune. You know, kind of do more episodes that are a little more on the serious side of things, like, you know, kind of really dig deep into these things. But what I really tend to do is like get into like more ridiculous type of subjects and topics and play just equally silly and ridiculous VGM, or in the case of our next track, a truly ridiculous cover, itself being a huge collection of musical memes. So this madness you're about to hear is Queen and the Grand Knight with a Kana from Pettiponel's Trash Bin, and this is featured in episode 14, Re7 Granddad. that was Queen and the Grand Knight with a canoe. And that was a cover of the, it was originally one of the Flintstones NES games title theme, but it was most infamously known for being in the Seven Granddad ROM hack, as well as featuring a couple of Toho tracks, and then a section of In the Hall of the Mountain King, which was most likely as a reference to the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the syndicated cartoon on Fox Kids. And this is all brilliantly done in the style of Queen and the Dark Knight Round 1 from the game Rusty, the PC 98 version. And this is from the SoundCloud account called Pettipanel's Trash Bin, which is a side account of Saria Lames, who is a fantastic chiptunist. And she actually just recently released a comprehensive guide of how to actually write an MML, which is the music macro language, which is some really deep, programming music, specifically chiptune music. Craziness. And this was featured in episode 14, Re 7 Granddad. And that was just me digging deep into the ridiculousness well that is within my brain, full of so many weird references and such. And actually, the one I'd like to call out is the, which is a very deep reference to an Adult Swim show called Perfect Hair Forever, and where the villain, Koifyo, who is a very muscular old man with giant multicolored hair, constantly changing colors. So he's headed up to here with his, henchman Catman. Actually, let me just play that clip right here.
Catman has let me down again. Why? Why do I keep relying on him? What the f are you doing?
So for those of you who have been listening for a while, I may have noticed every once in a while that pops in is just me censoring myself because, I'll keep most of the bad words shit, ass, and all that stuff in here. But when it comes to you got to keep it clean. I don't mean to say it. Just sometimes it just comes out when I get excited and really into something. It's kind of the fun of working with Ableton, because I have all these different channels I can layer on top of each other and just do all, these fun little things. And speaking of fun little things and Adult Swim references, I'm going to play you a fun little track featured in an episode that was basically a giant Tim and Eric Awesome Show Great Job reference. This is Grand Slam Achievement from Super Family Tennis, or known as Smash Tennis outside of Japan, composed by Yoshinori Kawamoto. And this is featured in episode 32, Sports! And that was Grand Slam Achievement from Super Family Tennis, also known as Smash Tennis, composed by Yoshinori Kawamoto, and that was featured in the episode 32, Sports! And just the quick of it is basically in the entire episode, I started it off with the a chiptune remix of the Sports song from Tim and Eric Awesome Show, and then all the sports I referred to as the names in that sports song, so Gilded Hoops, Iced Canes, Yellow Ball, and then ended it with a Sega Genesis chiptune remix of the ending theme of Tim and Eric Awesome Show that I made myself. And it's kind of part of the reason why I feature largely chiptune music of the obscure variety on my shows, because I do create chiptune myself, mostly of the Sega Genesis variety, but of other types since, I got my hands on Deflamask back in 2019. So in combination with that, plus the 10 plus years of my listening to basically nothing but video game music of the chiptune variety from BGM rips, I have a pretty good knowledge of how all these things work and about the chips themselves. And I'll do focus episodes. So this Gems Jams episode 3 was a focus on the Sega Genesis sound chip, and I have done ones on the Virtual Boy sound chip, as well as all the expansion chips of the Famicom. And I am planning on doing more. I actually have one planned for the next episode, which is going to be, again, sports related. And what games and what sound chips they are, you're going to have to wait until the next episode comes out. One of them, of course, is going to be FM. That's as much a clue as I'm going to give you. But, yeah, mostly what I feature chiptune-wise is, the FM stuff. But I have been trying to branch out, of course, there's a lot of 8-bit stuff. But I've been trying to do more SNES as well. And I actually did an SNES-focused episode. So, you're going to get a double whammy of SNES goodness here. So this next track is Strategy Phase 2 from Zan 3 Spirits, composed by either Motoi Sakuraba or Hiroya Hitsushiba. And this is featured in episode 27, the SFC SNES Variety Pack. And that somber song was Strategy Phase 2 from Zan 3 Spirits, composed by either Motoi Sakuraba or Hiroya Hitsushiba, featured in episode 27, SFC SNES Variety Pack. And as you probably could tell from the music that I've been playing so far, I don't really go for the most commonly known stuff. I like digging deep into the weird kind of obscure stuff that most everybody doesn't know about. And that's the fun thing about an emporium. It's you go there and you don't know what you're going to find. You always find the weirdest stuff. Occasionally your everyday VGM will make it in here in some strange form or another. And sometimes I do kind of worry that, my tendency to dig, go into these weird places may be a little off-putting to the average listener, maybe. Because, some people, they may be wanting to just hear, the standards. Maybe want to hear, the more, the comfort food of VGM and stuff. But, this is just me. I have maybe a couple actual friends I can talk to about VGM, really dig deep. But, one of them, lives in the Bay Area, and I don't, really get to hang out with him as much. And a few others, don't really go as deep as I do. And, so I don't really have much anybody to talk to about it. So this is my way of getting it out, actually just getting all this stuff that's been building up in my head for the last decade and just getting it out there. And, also I used to host an open mic for that same amount of time, a decade. And then, it stopped. So I haven't had an outlet really to, get just this stuff in my head out. Because I used to, beatbox, I used to improv, I bring the people up. I sometimes just get up there and kind of just, go right off the top of my head with whatever was going on. And yeah, so this has been an awesome outlet for both these things. And actually talk about that open mic, it used to be every Thursday night. So that's why I release these episodes every Thursday, because that was the night. That was like, that was my weekly thing I was doing consistently for nearly 10 years or so. So using the past to inform what is today. And actually, to talk about some recent things this last year that I've been doing this show, a lot of big things have happened. One, starting this podcast and really getting more involved with the VGM podcast community that is out there. Just to list off some things, got to go see Niagara Falls for the first time. Finally letting myself become really involved with the chiptune and VGM communities, and making some digital friends through that. To name off a few: Haberchuck, Crazy Goji, Tane, just to name a few. I mean, there's so many. I can keep going. Met a few folks in person of the VGM and both the VGM and VGM podcast community. So I got to meet Jake Silverman, the button masher at in San Francisco at a show in DNA Lounge, as well as Gene Draband of Pixelated Audio, which is like I said, one of the podcasts that got me started with this at that same show. Now, let's see, here's a silly one. After 6 years of it being out, I finally got a Switch. The first modern console I've had since I had got the PSP back in 2005. And Jeezy Weezer's just so many other things. I could keep going, but I want to keep going with some more music here for you. And this one is surprisingly good because on the NES, as probably many who grew up during that time knows, they're licensed movie games most of the time were not that great, and the music was also not that great. But in this case, this is really good. This is Into the Labyrinth from the game Labyrinth. It was originally composed by Trevor Jones, and this Famicom version was arranged by Tsukasa Masuko. And this was featured in episode 36, Unexpected and Oddball Movie Games. That was Into the Labyrinth from Labyrinth on the Famicom, originally composed by Trevor Jones and arranged by Tsukasa Masuko, and this is featured in episode 36, Unexpected and Oddball Movie Games. And I need to backtrack on a statement here. I said that most movie games, licensed games, were pretty bad. There's actually a good part of them that were made in Japan that are actually really good. You know the ones. But unfortunately, the greater majority of the movie tie-in games are not that great because they were just made to be cash grabs. But that aside, I do plan on doing another one of these episodes because I've also already found a few movie game soundtracks that are pretty intriguing, and it's always fun to surprise. Just so many ideas I have for this coming year. So many things I'm thinking of doing. And actually, I'll talk to you about that after this last song I have featured for you. This is song number 12. And so whereas most of the music I've been featuring here today has been VGM related, either a VGM, a remix, or an original chiptune, or just original music that is definitely very much inspired by video game music. This next track is not so apparent with its VGM relatedness, if that's the right word. It's probably not. Because yes, just sometimes I like to feature music that I really like that may not be, VGM related. Sometimes. So now I'm going to play for you Chilton Walk .temp by Graham Cartna from their album .temp. And this is featured on episode 8, Anonymous. And that wild, bizarre little tune that you just done heard was Chilton Walk Temp by Graham Cartna from their album Temp. And this is featured in episode 48, Anonymous. And so now you may be asking, what is an Anonymous? Who is it? Who is this Anonymous? Well, Anonymous is this amazing animator that uses Steam Filmmaker that creates these just like meticulously animated videos that like every single movement is reacting, like moving to the music. And the video that this song was featured in, it was called Beach Bird spelled B-E-R-D. And if you want to know more, go check that episode out, episode 48. It's a really fun one. I had fun putting it together. I really love their videos. And actually, funny thing is that right as soon as I released this episode, when this episode came out, they had released the ad they had done for Taco Bell UK, which was really good. I don't know if they still have it up on their YouTube or not, but if it is, go check out Anonymous. And it's so good. And actually, this kind of like ties into something I want to talk about, is that I want to try to feature things that are more outside of like, the standard VGM and VGM podcast sphere. Because, along with like, other podcasters and like, musicians, like, VGM musicians, chiptunists that I want to get on this podcast as guests, I want to reach out to those that are actually like not really involved with that scene so much as like, they obviously have good taste in music that is video game music related. And, but they're not immediately part of that scene. They're more doing other video game related things. So like, videos based off video games and stuff like, or animating and, and then even break out of that sphere into other places for other peoples that are definitely not like video game related at all, but get them in here. And like, because at this point, most of us that are adults now, we've played video games. Like everybody has played video games and may have music that they like and maybe want to talk about, even though they're not aware of it. But before that, definitely want to do more stuff with like, my fellow podcasters as well as like, the VGM community. Like actually a couple things that are coming up. I believe I mentioned, I was talking to Robin Purnell of Rhythm and Pixels about having them on as guests on my show. I'm going to be planning on reaching out to others, some of my fellow newbies, such as, Mardarus, Professor Tom, Jameson, and then even like other, fellow chiptunists such as, Haberchuck and Crazy Goji. I want to have you guys on as guests, and actually with Haberchuck, he and I have something planned for the future. It's kind of like it's out of its infancy phase, and we're still kind of working on it. Gotta really workshop it, but that's something that's coming up sometime this year. And then actually been working with St. John, who is the host of Nerd Noise Radio, with something that he's going to be doing for his Channel 1. So I'm pretty ding-dang excited about that. And those are just some of the things that I actually have, have solidly kind of planned that are actually going to be happening. But there's just so many other ideas I have that I just really need to kind of like write down and get prepared for, and really reach out to folks and get started. Big plans for VG Emporium, I tell you. Big plans! And now it's time for a big thank you pile. So first and foremost, I want to thank my wife Heaven for just always being there, supporting me in this project, and actually giving me the kind of support, and really encouraging me to do it when I was had the idea really bubbling in my head, and then of course helping me to clear out this closet space that is currently my recording room. Because before this, I was recording in our living room, which wasn't the best place, and she just finally said, you know what, we got to clear this space out. We're going to do it. We're finally going to do it. And, we were reluctant to do it, but we finally did it, and now here I am. Here we are. And now thank you again so much to Brian and Jean of Pixelated Audio, for being my first VGM podcast and setting me on this path, and then to Robin Purnell of Rhythm and Pixels for giving me that final inspiration kick in the ass to get it going. And a big old thank you blast out to Mike and Justin of XVGM Radio, Ed Wilson of the VG Embassy, Alex the Messenger of A VGM Journey, my podcast bro Mardarus of ReVGM Podcast, Professor Tom of the Shuja Academy VGM Club, Jameson of the Bar Silence Podcast. Thank you to Bedroth, formerly of Very Good Music and currently of BG Mania, alongside Brian. A thank you to St. John and Hughes of Nerd Noise Radio. A thank you to Lee Tyrrell of The Sound Test. Thank you to Hammock of KVGM, The Last Wave. And a thank you to The Last Rican of VGM Fight Club. Just thank you all for the inspiration, just listening to your shows and just kind of inspiring me to keep doing my show and doing it better, the best I can do it. And now here's just a rapid fire shout out to a bunch of folks that I've just gotten to know over this last year. So Kung Fu Carlito, Jake Silverman, known as Button Masher, Haberchuck, Crazy Goji, Tane, Toby Comey, Game Genie Sokolov, Sontaku Oji, Hunter Van Brock, aka Demi Fortune, and there's just so many others. I could keep going, but it's just too many. So to all of those that I have missed, thank you for just, being you. And I'm just really hoping within this next year I'll really just allow myself to become less of a lurker and more of an interactor, like actually getting involved with conversations and all. It's just I have a hard time with jumping online at the right times when things are happening, and I happen to always just get in there after the conversations have happened, and I feel like, oh man, I'm just poking it with a stick. And tying into that, I want to try to make this show a little bit more interactive as well. This first year it was just kind of me getting settled in with it, figuring out what I'm doing, and now I want to try to like I said, get more guests on, try to get more on outside involvement with the show, like what I'm gonna be doing with Haber Chuck. And part of that is probably doing better at promoting myself. So actually speaking of promoting, if you've listened this far and if you're listening to the show, you obviously know where to find it. But if you're new to this show, it's your first time listening of all things on my 1-year anniversary of the show, you can find it on all your favorite podcatchers such as Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, Audible, Stitcher, and then on the social media such as Twitter and Instagram. And you can find the website at vgemporium.wordpress.com. And if you want to reach out, you can reach out at Twitter or on Instagram or at the email vgemporium@gmail.com. And there's even a Discord, which I will be linking in the show notes. And not much happening there right now, but like I said, hopefully within this next year, more will be happening. And I haven't done this at all in any of the episodes because I feel like I don't want to be a little asking for too much pandering or I don't know what it is, maybe just a little feeling a little self-conscious. But if you'd like, leave a review or a rating on any of those podcasters you're listening to this on, so Spotify, Apple, whatever, just to kind of give me an idea, if you're liking the show or how I'm doing, so hopefully I can do better at what I'm doing. And now, who am I? I am the proprietor and your host, Rage Cage, and you can find me on all the social medias, same social media such as Twitter, Instagram, as well as Facebook. And then I do create my own original music, which I post on SoundCloud occasionally, mostly of the chiptune variety. And that's Rage Cage, spelled RAYJKAYJ. So yeah, again, not to sound like a broken record, I'm hoping for big things this year to really reach out and get more interactive with you folks. Send me your special orders. Send me suggestions. If you want to be a guest on here at some point, hey, reach out to me. We'll figure it out. So now I guess a good way to actually end this episode is to tell you what's coming up this next Thursday. It's going to be a 4-for-1 deal. It's going to be 2 OSTs, 2 sound chips, 2 focuses on those things. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a nerd-tastic time. So now, instead of what I usually do, playing you out with the track that's currently playing underneath, I'm going to play you out with one of my most recent original tracks. It is, of course, a chiptune I made in Deflamask. I haven't quite come up with a name for it. The project name is called Jukebee, and it was made using the combination of the YM2413 FM sound chip and the SN76489 PSG sound chip, both used in the Sega Master System. Enjoy.